kind of, before we read this passage, I just want to call something to your mind. We talked about some major themes from the second story and the third story that relates to needs that we all have. And they came in the curses in the garden. If you remember, those curses were about childbirth and they were about farming or getting food. And we talked about how these relate to the false gods that are going to be in this region that we're going to talk about, the Babels and the Asherahs. And these two things relate to, if you think about it just more generally, the greatest needs that we have, the most basic needs that we have. And one of those is food and shelter, air, water, the things that we need to physically subsist. And the second one is to have significance. And you can think about us having children as a way of, and having a family as a way of having that significance. So with that in mind, Marissa, you want to read the first 9 verses since your mother volunteered you of Genesis 11.
Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used bricks instead of stone and tar from mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." So the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it is called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the whole face of the earth.
All right, thank you. All right, and we'll start with the question. We're going to ask this question pretty much every time. What questions do you have? What do you see in this passage that jumps out at you that makes you say, what's going on there?
I'd ask a question, it may not be the right one, but when he changed the language of the people, did he change the nationality of people like Chinese, French, or whatever like that too?
It doesn't seem like it. So part of what we skipped, because John's covered Noah, chapter 10 is the table of nations, and it's going to go into Greek detail. It's like a genealogy that fans out, and it's going to be like, well, this son over here, he made these people, and this son over here, he made these people, and it doesn't seem like immediately right away, but like this child went over here, son over here became these people that were over here, and this child went over here, became these people that were over here. But it doesn't seem like, to me anyway, it doesn't seem like he, made them different physically, other than confusing their language. But it's a good question.
Just curious.
And it's one of the things that it's addressing. Like you have one family that all these people are going to come from, and you might ask, like, why don't they look all the same? Why don't they all speak the same language if they were all one family? And so it seems like at least part of this is going to be about that, like how we got this diversity of people. So it's a good question. Anything else? Anything?
Building this big tower to make a name for themselves. Why make a name for themselves? I mean, they're the only people around.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. And kind of before we get to that, when I grew up thinking about this story, in my mind it was these people built a tower up to the heavens. They wanted to get equal with God. And if you look at some of the commentary on this, it's going to say that they're trying to get up equal with God. They want to get up there in heaven. But it's really clear why they're building this tower, right? It says, because they want to make a name for themselves. And they even kind of say, they're talking to each other and they're like, well, if we just scatter, we'll just be out everywhere. Like it'll be me and my family over here living away from everybody. But if we get together and we stay here, we can build something of permanence, something that will be around forever. And that's why I'm going to connect it to this idea of significance is what they're looking for. I think everyone wants significance in some way. Now, they're going to be different from us in that when people think about significance today, they think, well, I want to invent something. I want to discover something. I want to, I want people over the world to remember my name. I want to make a lot of money or make music or whatever it is. And they didn't really have that. There's not really anything they're going to do. And we've already seen somebody invented tools, and he's remembered for that. And there's a great hunter. But I think they get the idea of well, how are we going to do something that's going to last forever? What if we build a huge building that's going to be here forever? I think in their minds, and people will know that we were here, and they will know who built this tower. And I think there's something else that comes along with that, because if you don't have children, you can build the biggest tower in the world, right? And if you don't have children, are people going to remember your name? No, because it's your children aren't going to be around to say, hey, this is who built the tower, to tell the story of who built this tower. People are just going to come along and be like, oh, there's a big, cool tower. So they go hand in hand. I think that's a central part of this.
It's kind of directed, to themselves instead of, why not build it for God? That's the relationship that we want to uphold. And it seems like they're already getting sidetracked to provide for them, glorify themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
That's my observation, that not more than a question, it's an observation that later in the Bible, God gives us good reasons to come together to build His kingdom, and He tells us to do that in church. So we celebrate coming together. It's a sort of a different feeling than this.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that's interesting in the language here, in all languages, if you have dialogue, it's important to know who's speaking. And so you kind of have rules in the language. You learned them when you were a kid about our language, right? It's going to say, and John said, comma, double quote, everything John said, end it with a double quote. So we know where John finished speaking, and then it goes on from there, right? And if you were ever writing something and it was two people talking, your teacher was like, you've got to be clear about who said what, right? And you got to use these rules to know who said what. Well, something happens here in the Hebrew where it's like they said to each other, and they said to each other, and they said to each other, but then the Lord said. And so in the Hebrew, it turns out, if one person is talking, there's no reason to have another they said. And we have that repeated here. So in verse 3, it starts off with they said. Verse 4 starts off with they said. And in the Hebrew, that's completely unnecessary. In fact, by it being there, it tells us that something has happened here. Either one, time has passed, or two, you expect this to be a conversation and the other party didn't say anything. So if John and Mike are talking, and it says, and John said, hey, how about, we go hunting today? And John said, hey, it's a really nice day today. What that means is that Mike did not say anything. John's like, hey, let's go hunting today. And Mike's like, I'm not going to say anything. And so John says something else to try to get Mike to say anything. And so that's like what it's happening here. They said, come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly. And then God doesn't respond. And then they said, let's build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Then God comes down. And so it's like it separates these two things. It almost like the building the bricks, the coming together, God doesn't have any problem with that. But building a tower to make a name for ourselves, then now God's going to come down and see what's going on. There's something else that's interesting about this when you look at who, we talked about the original audience. And who was the original audience traditionally that's hearing this for the first time? So it's the Israelites, the base of Mount Sinai, Moses has come down. They know anything about making bricks?
They've made a brick or two.
They've made a brick or two, or 3 million. Okay? And so, what does it mean to them when you say, hey, there were these people that got together and said, let's make bricks and let's build a tower, a huge tower, so that our name will not disappear from the earth?
They probably didn't make it themselves.
That's exactly what Pharaoh is doing. It's exactly what they were enslaved to do for Pharaoh.
To make a name for him.
To make a name for him. Now here's interesting. Did it work? Anybody ever heard of Ramses? Anybody ever heard of Tutankhamun? Yes, you have. Why? Because he built a tower so that his name would not disappear from the earth. And so, now the interesting thing is, this is not in Egypt. And you might ask, well, where is it? Well, it's in Babylon. So the word Babel is the Hebrew transliteration of Babylon, essentially. That's interesting. Babylon's going to come up later. It's not called Babel. It's called Babylon. Babylon is the Greek transliteration for that city. But this is the same city. Another interesting thing that happens is if you just look at the directions so far that have been happening, it is east. East. They got put out on God put the angel on the east of the garden, and they moved east, and they moved east, and they moved east. And if you look at our map up here, where the box is, that's the area of Israel. To the left of that, you have Egypt, which is going to be a big part of our story. But if you're going east, that's to the right. And it turns out you're not just going to go straight east, not due east, because that whole area is a desert. And there's no food there. So we have this thing called the Fertile Crescent, which makes sort of like a crescent. If it's a moon, it's on its side. This is the direction they're going to go. And they're going to end up all the way over here on the right. I don't know if you can see, you might see Chaldea. You might see which is where Abraham's going to come from. But Babylon is all the way over here in the east, to the right. And up there to the north, due north of it, you're going to see Nineveh up there. That's going to be the two kingdoms that are going to be important later, Babylon and Assyria. So these people here are the first people that are eventually going to build Babylon. God is going to deter them for a while. But they are eventually going to make Babylon. It's going to become that civilization. And they're over here in like the other fertile part, the part where you can get food, because these rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, are flowing down there. Now all that water is coming from the mountains that are up to the north. But you've got a desert in between there. So this is what's going on geographically. They have went east and east and east and east and east. And then we'll talk about what happens when somebody goes west. So anyway, we've got this story, and they're looking for significance in a way, I would say. They don't want their name to disappear. They want to be remembered. And so they built this tower, and God has said, nah, I'm not about that. And he also has this thing like, there's this weird thing like, well, if they've done this, then nothing will be impossible for them. I'm surprised nobody asked that. Like that, what is that about? And it's going to echo something from the garden, does it not? Does it not sound a whole lot like, now that they've eaten this fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, oh, what happens if they eat from the tree of life? We can't let them eat from the tree of life. And so what I see here is that God is moving in certain ways. He can see into the future. And he's like, I gotta direct things here. Now, talk about Babylon being significant. How is Babylon going to be significant later? They're going to conquer Israel. In fact, they're going to conquer Israel at the exact time that God needs them to conquer Israel. Their kingdom is going to peak, and it's going to expand, and it's going to get back over here to Israel at the exact time that God needs that to happen because of what's going on in Israel. And it turns out in a few chapters, we're going to see God kind of doing the same thing where he's like, Abraham, look, like your descendants are going to come back to Egypt. It's going to be 400 years, and this is going to happen. And I can just imagine Abraham being there like, what? As if God had come down to me and God's like, listen, Ryan, your descendants are going to go to Little Rock, Arkansas, and then the Arubians are going to raise up, and then there's going to be the great happening, and then it's just like, I don't, what? All this stuff is going to happen in the future that God's working out, that he's doing. So that's what I see here in this. All right, let's move on. After this, what we're going to have is a genealogy. I'm not going to have anybody read it. A couple interesting things that's going to happen is we have already walked this genealogy. Sitting at the table of nations, it's like it fans out. And it goes like 4 or 5 people deep into this genealogy here, but this one's going to back up. It's going to go all the way back up to Shem. And then we're going to have a normal genealogy. Father, son, father, son, father, son. Another interesting thing to look at is if you just look at the numbers, how long these people are living. I see 403, 403, 430, 209, 207, 200, 119. And in general, these numbers are going down. And then it gets interesting when we get to verse 27. So Mike, you said you would read next. So Genesis 27 to 32.
This is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans in the land of his birth. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarah, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarah was childless because she was not able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarah, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years, and he died in Haran.
All right, so let's talk about the geography first. As far right as you can go on this crescent, the very bottom right is Ur. This is where Abraham is. And he's going to make it back to with his father to Haran, which is at the very top of this. And then Abraham's going to eventually come back down the left-hand side of the crescent to Canaan, or Israel, which is the white box. Okay, so that's the geography of what's happening here. And
Approximately how many miles is that journey, would you say?
it does not have a key on here, but just from my memory, Haran is approximately where Balaam is going to live. And when I was looking at that, it's like 250 miles that Balaam came down to Israel. So I'm just going to say approximately 600.
Just say
It's a long way. It's a long way on foot. Long way. So that's a good question on the distance. I'm going to explain what's happened here with this family because you can get lost in these names and stuff. But Terah is going to have 3 sons. Now, initially, only one of them is going to have children. He's going to have 3 children. That's clear. He's going to have Lot. He's going to have Milcah, and he's going to have this Iscah. And then that one's going to die, orphaning these 3 children. Okay? Now the other 2 brothers that are still alive, which is Abram and Nahor, they're going to get married, and it's clear that one of them is going to marry one of those daughters. Okay? Milcah. Which is interesting because what would normally happen in this culture, in that situation? You have a father that's still alive, he has a son. That son has 3 kids, and then he dies. Those 3 kids are probably going to go back into the father's household. The father's father's household. And unless the daughters are married, if the daughters are married, they leave the household. They become whoever's family that they go to. If they're still young, they haven't married yet, they become the grandfather's responsibility to marry off them at this point. But what happens is, we have this weird phrase, Abraham and Nahor both married. And what it actually says in the Hebrew is, Abraham and Nahor, he married. It's a singular, he married. And the idea of this is they got together and of a singular mind, they did something. And because Abram comes first, it's going to be Abram's idea. It's like Abram had this idea, and he goes to Nahor, and he says, hey, let's marry these two women. Now, the confusing part is that it's clear Nahor is marrying this orphaned daughter, Milcah. Abram marries Sarai, and then we have this person show up, this Iscah, out of nowhere. The only time you're going to see that name in the whole Bible. And it's like, well, who is she? What happens to her? Why did Abram marry this Sarai? And it's like they got together and they of a one mind of Abraham's idea decided to marry, and then it's like Abraham marries some random girl and Nahor marries the orphaned niece. So I won't go because I'm not an expert on these names and how the names come from. But what the Jews have decided has happened here is that Iscah and Sarai are the same person. And they have reasons for why they believe this. And so Abram and Nahor get together and they decide we're going to marry the orphaned nieces, which is not uncommon in that time. But normally what you would do is you would take them and find husbands for them and marry them off. What they have done, that's part of taking care of them, right? We gotta do our duty and take care of these girls. That means finding them a husband. They went a step further and said, we will just marry them and bring them into our household and take care of them that way. Maybe they didn't want to marry them off to people there. We find out they're gonna leave. Terah's gonna leave. He's getting out of this place. He's getting out of Babylon. He's getting out of this place where they want to build towers to their own name. And so maybe they're like, we don't want to marry them off to the people here because it's not suitable. We will bring them into our household. And then, of course, we have this, at the end of this, now Sarai was barren, and she had no children. And one of the questions you might ask is, well, did Abraham know? Did Abram know that Sarai was barren? And the answer is that the text seems to indicate yes. Now we know, you may or may not know, if a woman is barren. A lot of times we don't find out, until 5 years after they get married, and we're like, well, what's happened here? They're not having kids, and then you go to try to find out what's wrong. But the text strongly indicates that he knew that she was barren when he has married her. Which means what? We had a story about people that are all about making a name for themselves. And then we have this guy who has married someone that guarantees he's not going to make a name for himself. It's also interesting that we have this genealogy, father, son, father, son, father, son, father, son. It ends. Now it could just end because we've gotten to Abraham, and Abraham's where our story is going to be. But this genealogy ends with a done. Terah has Abraham. Abraham marries a barren woman. Done. That's it.
What's the outcome?
What is the outcome? There's no children.
It's obvious. Yeah.
It's obvious. There's no children. And the other thing, just to make it clear, because you could be like, well, Terah has 3 kids. One of them has died, but now there's 2 of them. And we see in verse 31, the other one gets left behind. Terah takes Abram, Lot, son of Haran that had died, his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of Abraham. Well, who's the other guy? What happens to Nahor? Nahor's gone. Nahor is out of the Beit. He's out of his father's household. So Abraham's the guy. If the lineage is going to continue, it's through Abraham, and Abraham's married a barren woman. It's done. And that's going to lead us to our next set of verses here. We've got Genesis 12, 1 through 9. Volunteers? Anybody want to read these? All right, Johns.
The Lord said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. All the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. What?
To verse 9. Through verse 9.
So Abram went as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled through the land as far as the side of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. At the time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, where he built an altar to the Lord, called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev.
All right. So like immediately, God is like, he makes this promise. And this promise is a promise, right? I mean, who doesn't want this promise? I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. And you will be a blessing. So we had these people that are like, let's build a tower. Let's make our name great. Let's make our name never disappear. God says, let me spread you guys out. And then we come down and we have this guy, and he's like, I got this niece. There's nobody around here suitable for her. How am I going to take care of her? And we know she's not going to be able to have children. Nobody's going to want to marry her anyway. I will marry her. I don't need to have children. I don't need to make my name great. I need to take care of her.
And that's the significance. That's what Crystal just said. Because she wasn't, like you say, to further your family and your business and your mark on the world, you have to have kids in this culture. And
not just in the culture, in the world. Like, that is their reality, right? You're not going to invent anything that the world's all going to buy and give you money to make you significant. It's not going to happen. You're not going to make music that you're going to record and people are going to pay you for. If children are a retirement plan, when you get old, what is going to happen to you when you have no children? Okay, they're a retirement plan. They are your significance. They are your continuation of what you're doing. If you're going to be a farmer and you're going to be great at farming and people are going to remember you for farming, your children better be farmers. And they better take your farm and the stuff that you have planted and the plants that you have cultivated and the new species that you have created of plants. And they better continue them or they're going to die and they're going to be gone. If you're an armor smith, a blacksmith, and you make cool things out of metal and you figured stuff out, your children better come up and become blacksmiths. And you better pass your knowledge on to them and then continue it, or it's going to be gone. It's going to die out with you. They are everything, having children. In the culture, but the culture comes from reality. This is the reality. And she's not going to do it. She's barren. Whatever husband she's going to, it's not going to give him kids. He's done the opposite. And because he did the opposite, God's like, oh, I will do the opposite. I'm not going to keep you from making your name great. I'm going to make your name great. I will do it, even though you have married her. And it's not just about that. It's not about him. You will be a blessing. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you. This promise is what the whole rest of the Bible will be about. It's not a key point in the rest of the Bible. It's not related to what the rest of the Bible is about. It is what the rest of the Bible is about. And the Bible is going to keep reminding us of this promise that we're going to see. Now, the other thing I want to point out here, he comes down, does he settle in a certain place? Now he's moving, he's going to here, he's going to here, he's going to here. He's pitching his tent. We got these keywords. He traveled, and he moved, and he traveled, and he went to here and there. And he pitched his tent. He didn't build a house wherever he went. He said, I'm going to move wherever God needs me to move. God told me to go. So I better be ready to go when God tells me to go. And he's going to build 2 altars in here. Now, what is an altar? And when I say what is an altar, you're going to say it's a place, it's something where you sacrifice stuff to God. But what is an altar physically? It's stones that are piled up together. It is a tower. It is a tower that is built to honor God's name. Abraham says, hey, I'm mobile. I don't need to settle. I don't need to worry about my name. I'm going to build a tower just like these other guys, but it's going to be a tower to God. And he's moving around. He's building a tower here to God. He's building a tower over here to God. He's building a tower over here to God.
And it's not built by slaves or by men pushing people to do things that they don't want to do. It's made by a man who's willing to do something for God.
Exactly. That's one of the questions in Babel that I wrestle with is, well, is there anything in this story about that they're oppressing people to do that? And I don't see it there. Like, you don't see it in the words of the story. Now, if you look at the Israelites, you think, like, that's the first thing they're going to think, is that they're oppressing people, made them slaves to build these bricks for them. But I don't see it in the story. But now, Abraham is certainly not about that. That's the cool thing about a small tower. You build it by yourself. All right, what else do you all see in these three stories, essentially, that we have here?
In both stories, the Lord is involved with the people. I mean, he appears and speaks to both parties.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's not clear. He speaks to the Babel people, but he goes down in Acts.
Right.
The key part of that is that he goes down. Right? It's not just that he's up here in heaven, like, oh, I see what they're doing, let me scatter them. He goes down to see what's going on here. It's going to happen again later, interestingly. But yeah, he's involved, and he's been involved in every story. Right? He's there in the garden. He's talking to Cain before Cain kills Abel. He's talking to Noah. He's talking to Noah before the flood. He's talking to Noah after the flood. He's watching what's going on here in Babel. It seems like he's looking for somebody. Like the world has fallen in the garden. He's looking for somebody to put this thing back together. And it seems like when he's found Abram here, you notice when he found Noah, what did he tell Noah to do? And you go build a boat, right? Well, when he sees Abram, it does say the Lord had said to Abram, leave your country. So that's the first thing that he tells him. And it does seem that Abram leaves, okay? But after that, God's like, all right, this is the one. I was reading to my girls, they got a children's Bible, and not a couple nights ago we read the story of Abram, and for the picture for Abram, it had Abram at night, and there was this beam of light coming down, shining on Abraham. And it's in the literature of this. The table of nations fanning out. It's like he's got 3 sons, and then this son had this, and then this son had this, and this son had this, and then his grandson had this, and his other son had this, and the other son had this. And it gets here, and it's like, it backs up and says, let's go right down. Let's go right down to Abraham. Let me tell you why we're interested in Abraham. And then God is like, you are the one. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. You're going to be the one that I'm going to bless all peoples.
You're who I've been looking for.
You are who I have been looking for. We have found it. And what is the very next thing? We haven't read yet. What is the very next thing that's going to happen to him? God is going to take away his food. The very next verse, verse 10, there was a famine in the land. And at that point, we have come back full circle. The garden was about childbirth. It was about farming, getting food, meeting those needs. Now, Abraham's already cut himself off from the childbirth thing. He's already married a barren woman. He's cut that one off. God's promised him, I'm going to fix that. As it said when he's going to fix that, but he's promised, I'm going to fix that. But right now, you got no child, you got no prospects of getting a child. But you got land, you got food because you live in this fertile crescent. Let's take that away too. God has found the one, and he has taken away the two things that people want: sustenance and significance. Abraham has been stripped of both. Now, there was a question back in the Cain and Abel story that no one mentioned. But Ron asked it later. And it's, what about Abel? This guy, like, the only thing he did was offer a sacrifice that was pleasing unto the Lord. And then he dies in a field because his brother has presumably hit him in the head with a rock. And God saw this coming. God knows exactly what's happening, and he goes down to talk to Cain about it. And the story is about Cain, the murderer, not the guy who did what was right. And then he dies in a field at his brother's hand. Then we've got Noah. Noah finds grace in the eyes of the Lord. What does he get? To build a giant boat and live on a boat with animals for a year? Come out to a world where there's no one in it? And then we have Abraham. Abraham is the guy that God is looking for. And the two things that man needs. God's going to cut him off from it. We have something we call the prosperity gospel. God is going to, if you do what God says, if you trust in God, God's going to give you everything you need.
Just got to believe harder.
You got to believe harder. I tell you what, I haven't seen it yet. I have not seen it yet. What I've seen is that the more interest God takes in you, the harder it's going to get. There's somebody else. Enosh. Maybe the most favored man who ever lived. And what does God do? God takes him. What I see is we have got the wrong mindset here. Abel did what God wanted him to do. And Abel went to be with the Lord. Enosh did what God wanted him to do. Enosh went to be with the Lord before it was his time. God said, why wait? I'll take you now. Let's get him out of there. Noah comes along. God's got a job for Noah to do. And what we are going to see again and again and again is if God has got a job for someone to do, buckle up, because it is not going to be easy. It seems like there's two things that God can do. He can get you out of here, because this isn't your home anyway, or he's got something for you to do. And it ain't going to be easy. All right, anything else before we take a break?
We're moving further from the garden.
Well, we weren't. We started, we don't know where the garden is, but we know we went east, all the way until we got down to the end of this fertile crescent. I don't know what is on there, but I think it's like, I think it goes over the ocean. And we're like out of land at this point. And we have come back to where our story is going to be. We've come back west with Abraham and his family. All right, you got a few minutes to take a break.